All Theo Milton wanted was a passionate moment with his wife, Callie. After spending 21 long years behind bars, he dreamed of holding her again, of reclaiming the life he believed was stolen from them both. But destiny had other plans. Was his tragic end the result of revenge, jealousy, or something far darker hidden beneath the surface? Investigators were determined to uncover the truth. Was the killer someone lurking in the shadows, or living under the same roof? Among the countless lives lost in 2021, Theo stood out, not because of COVID-19, but because of something more devastating, something that would send shockwaves through Jacksonville, Florida. This wasn't just another death. It was a story of love, betrayal, ambition, and a brutal downfall. Theo Milton was born into modest beginnings in the Jacksonville suburbs. His parents weren't wealthy, but they instilled in him old-fashioned values: hard work, loyalty, and perseverance. Theo absorbed those lessons deeply, determined that dedication would one day carry him out of poverty. By his late 20s, he had secured a stable career in the oil industry. Starting as a low-level worker, he climbed the corporate ladder with sheer persistence. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and Theo believed he was building a foundation strong enough to support the life he dreamed of. Then, in 1999, everything changed. It was at a glittering charity gala that Theo met Callie. She was everything he wasn't: elegant, magnetic, and already a well-known figure in Jacksonville's social scene. Her world was one of champagne, expensive gowns, and influential friends. Theo, with his plain suit and quiet manners, should have faded into the background, but instead, Callie noticed him. Their connection was immediate. Callie was intrigued by his steady ambition, and Theo was captivated by her beauty and sophistication. Against all odds, the two quickly became inseparable. Within months, Theo proposed, and Callie accepted. Their wedding was the kind of spectacle that dominated local headlines. A lavish affair costing over $100,000, it was filled with crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, and an elite guest list. For Theo, it was the ultimate symbol of love. But behind the glitter, there was a hidden truth. He had borrowed money, taken out loans, and stretched himself to the breaking point just to give Callie the fairy tale wedding she demanded. In the eyes of Jacksonville, they were the perfect couple. But cracks soon began to show. Callie's appetite for luxury only grew after the wedding. Designer clothes, exotic vacations, endless social appearances. She expected it all, no matter the cost. Theo worked long hours at the oil company, but his paycheck couldn't match her appetite for extravagance. By the end of 1999, disaster struck. The company downsized, and Theo lost his job. Without savings and drowning in debt, he found himself unable to maintain the life Callie insisted upon. Her disappointment was cutting, her demands relentless. "You promised me a better life," she reminded him constantly, her voice sharp with impatience. Theo, a man raised to believe that persistence solved everything, found himself at a crossroads. He loved Callie with all his heart, but he could no longer keep pace with her expectations. And that's when Ralph appeared. Ralph was an old acquaintance from Theo's days in the oil fields. But Ralph had chosen a different path, one that led deep into the world of organized crime. He knew of Theo's struggles, and he saw an opportunity. "I can fix this for you," Ralph whispered one night. "One job. Quick. Easy. You walk away with 70 grand. And..." The deal was simple. Transport cocaine hidden inside shipping crates. No strings, no questions. Just deliver and collect. For Theo, the offer was intoxicating. $70,000 meant Callie could have her vacations, her designer clothes, her social standing. It meant he could save his marriage. Theo hesitated. He had always lived by honesty, by hard work. But desperation outweighed his principles. For Callie, he told himself, "I'm doing this for her." The drop-off seemed routine. The crates were loaded, the operation smooth. But Theo never knew that federal agents had been watching Ralph's network for months. As soon as he handed over the shipment, the authorities swooped in. The dream of saving his marriage evaporated in a blinding moment of handcuffs and sirens. Theo was just 22 when the gavel came down. Convicted of drug trafficking, he was sentenced to 21 years in prison. The punishment was merciless. The young man who once dreamed of building a future now found himself surrounded by steel bars, cold walls, and the constant threat of violence. Life inside was brutal. Every day was a battle, mentally and physically. But Theo clung to one lifeline: Callie. He believed their love would survive his incarceration. He wrote her letters, made phone calls, whispered her name to himself at night. "One day, Callie. One day, I'll be back with you." But while Theo's world stood still, Callie's was anything but. By 2019, with Theo still serving his sentence, Callie reinvented herself. The rise of social media offered her the stage she always craved. She became an online lifestyle influencer, posting images of luxury vacations, designer gowns, and champagne-soaked evenings. Her following grew, her brand partnerships multiplied, and she built an image of untouchable glamour. But it was only half real. Behind the perfect Instagram photos were wealthy men, business moguls, celebrities, and socialites who financed her extravagant lifestyle. They didn't care about her past or about Theo rotting in prison. They just wanted to be part of the fantasy she created. Callie became one of the most sought-after influencers of her circle, but it was a life built on deception and shadows. To the world, she was thriving. To Theo, she was waiting faithfully for him. The truth couldn't have been further apart. In 2021, after 2 decades of captivity, Theo finally walked free. He had dreamed of this moment every single day behind bars, reuniting with Callie, holding her again, starting over. His twin sister, Florence, came to pick him up. Florence had always been his anchor, but as she embraced him at the prison gates, she saw the change in his eyes. The boy she once knew had been replaced by a hardened man carrying the weight of years. During the drive home, Florence tried to warn him. "Theo, Callie isn't the same woman you remember. She's changed. Please, be careful." But Theo refused to listen. "You don't understand. She's my wife. We're going to be together again." Florence said nothing more, but in her heart, she feared that the reunion her brother dreamed of might turn into something far darker. The next day, Callie finally appeared. The sound of her high heels echoed through the hallway as she entered the house, her golden satin dress shimmering in the dim light. She looked as breathtaking as ever, glamorous, intoxicating, untouchable. "Theo!" she cried, rushing to embrace him. Theo wrapped his arms around her, tears in his eyes. For a moment, it was as if nothing had changed. 2 decades of pain melted away in her perfume and the warmth of her touch. But behind her smile, there was distance. As they sat together, Callie seemed distracted, her eyes darting toward the clock, her tone rehearsed. That night, as Theo reached for her, his heart racing after 21 years of longing, Callie gently pushed him away. "Tomorrow night," she whispered softly, avoiding his gaze. Theo's face fell. He tried to brush it off, telling himself she was nervous, that it had been so long. But deep down, a quiet unease began to stir. He had no idea that this hesitation was only the beginning of a far greater nightmare. Theo froze, taken aback. "What? Callie?" He stopped short. He had been dreaming of this moment for so long, and now she was trying to push him away. "Callie, please," he said, his voice pleading now. "I've waited so long. I need this." His hands gently reached for hers, and he pulled her closer. "Let's just enjoy this moment tonight. Don't let anything hold us back." For a long moment, Callie didn't say anything. Then, slowly, she nodded, though something still felt off. As the night unfolded, Theo was eager to be with her, to share the intimacy he had imagined for years. But the moment he touched her, as his hand slid beneath her clothing, he was immediately struck by an overwhelming foul odor. It wasn't just the usual smell of sweat or the remnants of a long day. This was something stronger, more putrid. He pulled away, looking at her in confusion. "Callie, what's going on?" His voice was laced with concern as he stared at her, unsure of what was happening. Callie looked away, her face flushed. "It's nothing. Just, please don't worry about it," she mumbled. But Theo's concern only grew. He moved closer, determined to understand what was wrong with the woman he loved, the woman he had waited for so long. And then, when he finally moved to seek intimacy, he felt something horrible, something revolting that made his stomach churn. Maggots, living creatures, festering in the very place where intimacy should have been. Theo's heart stopped, and his breath caught in his throat. He stared in horror, the smell overwhelming him, but it was the sight that shook him to his core. Theo stepped back, his chest heaving with disbelief. His voice was barely above a whisper. How could this happen? Callie's face greened with shame, but she didn't say anything. The truth was now clear. She had allowed her body to decay, to rot from within, while he had been locked away. The woman he thought was his perfect love was now a rotting facade, a reminder of how his sacrifice had been in vain. Theo was left standing there, torn between his love and the ultimate betrayal he had just uncovered. The reality was too much to bear. The woman he had given everything for was now a stranger. Theo finally made up his mind. After the horrifying discovery of Callie's decayed condition, there was no turning back. The man who had spent 21 years behind bars, sacrificing his youth and freedom for a woman he loved, could no longer ignore the truth. The woman he had once adored was now a stranger, a woman who had abandoned him while he was locked away, a woman who had allowed herself to decay physically and emotionally. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Theo had ever imagined. And as he stood there in the living room staring at Callie, the weight of the decision he was about to make settled heavily on his shoulders. He looked at her, still wearing the shimmering gold dress she had greeted him in just days ago, but now it seemed like a costume, a facade. He couldn't recognize her anymore, not in the way he once did. The allure she once held was gone, replaced by repulsion and disappointment. "Cal, I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice firm but weary. "I can't pretend that everything is okay. I've waited 21 years for this moment, and all I've come back to is a lie." He paused, his gaze steady, but full of sorrow. "I want a divorce. I'm done." Callie, who had been trying to avoid his gaze since the discovery in the bedroom, now stiffened. She opened her mouth as if to protest, but Theo cut her off. "And the 70,000 that was promised to me, I'm not sharing it with you. I've already lost everything because of you." Those words hit Callie like a brick to the chest. The 70,000, the money she had already imagined spending on herself, on keeping up with her extravagant lifestyle, was now slipping away. Her heart pounded as reality set in. Theo's rejection wasn't just emotional, it was financial. She couldn't lose this money. Without it, she'd be exposed. Her wealth, her status, the life she had built, all came from the image of a successful, beautiful, powerful woman. But now everything was on the verge of collapse. "You don't mean that," Callie stammered, a slight quiver in her voice as she reached for his arm. "Theo, please. We can work this out. I swear I'll change. I'll make things better. I love you." Her hands were trembling, her voice a mix of desperation and fear. But Theo just shook his head, pulling away from her touch. "You can't change. Not after everything. The woman I loved is gone. You've destroyed it all. I can't look at you the same way anymore. You're not the woman I thought I knew." The words cut deep, and for a moment, Callie's face twisted with panic. The chill of reality sank into her. She had lied. She had built a life on the illusion of perfection, and now it was all falling apart. Theo, his mind set, moved toward the door. "I need to get out of here," he muttered. But Callie's desperation was boiling into rage. Without him, she would be nothing. Without him, the life she clung to would collapse into dust. Her breathing quickened as her mind raced. She couldn't lose him. She wouldn't. In the dead of night, as the house grew eerily quiet, Callie moved behind Theo as he sat on the couch, lacing his shoes. From the drawer, she pulled a hammer. Her hand trembled, sweat rolling down her temple. She hesitated for one last breath, then her face hardened. Without warning, she struck him on the back of the head. The sound was sickening. Theo crumpled to the ground, blood pouring from the wound. Disoriented, he groaned, struggling to rise. Before he could, Callie grabbed a kitchen knife. In one swift motion, she stabbed him in the abdomen. The blade sank deep. Theo gasped, his hands weakly reaching for her as blood bubbled from his lips. "Theo." But his voice was only a whisper. His life was slipping away. Moments later, the man who had given everything for her was gone. Callie stood frozen, panting, staring at the blood pooling around him. Then, survival instincts kicked in. She cut herself, just enough to leave scratches and bruises. She tousled her hair, smeared blood across her arms, and dialed 911. "Help! Help!" she screamed. My husband is dead. Someone broke in." When officers arrived, the house was too clean. The front door stood open, but there was no forced entry. Furniture sat untouched, glass unbroken. Theo's body was neatly positioned in the living room, no signs of struggle. Detective Cade Walker arrived shortly after. A veteran of grim cases, he trusted his instincts more than surface details. And here, something was off. He studied Callie, sitting on the couch. Tear-streaked eyes, trembling hands. But her composure was too controlled. "Tell me again what happened," Walker asked. Callie recited her story. An intruder, a crash. Theo dead on the floor. Her words were shaky, but the rhythm too rehearsed. Walker's gaze lingered on the bloodstains. They didn't match a chaotic attack. They matched staging. Later, at the station, financial records revealed a $70,000 transfer from Theo's account into Callie's, hours after his death. At the same time, forensic reports showed her wounds were self-inflicted. The puzzle was complete. Callie wasn't a victim. She was the killer. When confronted in the interrogation room, she broke. "I did it," she whispered, trembling. "I couldn't lose everything. I needed the money." Her mask had finally cracked. News of the case spread like wildfire. Callie Milton, once glamorous, adored, was now branded a murderer. In court, the prosecution laid out a chilling picture. The financial motive, the staged wounds, the confession. Witnesses testified about Callie's obsession with wealth and image. Florence, Theo's twin sister, stood before the jury. Her voice shook with grief, but her words carried weight. "My brother gave everything to her. His love, his freedom, his life. And she took it all. He was loyal. Too loyal. And it cost him everything." The defense tried to paint Callie as a woman under duress, spiraling under stress, but the evidence was too strong. When the verdict was read, the courtroom fell silent. Guilty of second-degree murder, sentenced to life without parole. Florence wept. Justice had been served, but the loss still cut deep. Prison stripped Callie of her power. The woman who once flaunted gold dresses and extravagant parties now wore a gray jumpsuit. The makeup, the luxury, the admiration, all gone. 3 months later, she collapsed in her cell. Years of untreated disease had eaten away at her body. The same infection that had horrified Theo on their final night now claimed her life. She died alone. No crowd mourned, no headlines praised her. She became nothing more than a cautionary tale, a woman consumed by greed and vanity, undone by her own lies. Theo's story lived on, a warning about misplaced loyalty and blind devotion. His sacrifice had been wasted on a woman who saw him only as a means to an end. In the end, justice wasn't delivered by the court alone. It came through the slow, inevitable destruction of Callie Milton herself.